All right, mixtape, you're back, and we have a good power ranking. I think we're going to be a little bit biased today. We typically don't like to do that on the Thursday power ranking episode, but things are happening, and I think we're going to get a little bit biased today.
Yeah, today it's going to be a Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Lightning crossover, as well as a Locked On Hoilers.
No, it's the Oilers.
The Oilers.
Get it right. Get it.
Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Chris Maselli from Locked On Avalanche. With me, as always, on the Thursday Power Ranking edition, Mr. Adam Denker from Locked On Lightning. And yeah, a brand spanking new power ranking for you. And we always complain about how the top just doesn't seem to have changed. It kind of, it has not in full, but those two teams that are always locked in at the top, one of them got knocked out, and not only got knocked out one space, two spaces by two teams in particular that we kind of like. So I'm excited to get to this one.
Yeah, man. Missed last week due to some personal stuff I had to take care of, but I'm back just in time to for this to be a celebration, really, of what I believe, I think we could both agree, is hockey justice in the rankings.
It's like halfway through the season, and I feel like, we won a Stanley Cup, kind of, or maybe we got to the Stanley Cup final. We haven't. Maybe next week we'll have won it. Personal feelings.
I think we're gonna get the award for almost there. Instead of a participation.
Yeah. But no, like last week, it was kind of more of the same. Couple teams moving here and there, but we're at the point in the season where it's not going to be people are jumping, 10 spots or anything like that in the case of a week. So what we're going to do today, we're obviously going to bring them up. We will, discuss a little bit here and there. And then because, we're kind of at the halfway point of the season, we'll take a look at the playoff teams and are they seeded appropriately with how we have them ranked. Again, this is across the whole NHL channel at Locked On. All our hosts get a vote. Adam proudly does not vote. That is, his American right to not do that.
I will die on that hill.
So even though his team are where they are, you can't call him biased for doing it because he didn't vote on it. I did, so you can blame me. But we'll bring that up right now. We'll go full screen with it. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, there you go. If you're not watching on YouTube, we typically read down the top 10 and then kind of break things down. So your top 10, number 1 remains the same with the Florida Panthers. Number 2 has been the Canes for a while now. That is no longer. The Colorado Avalanche take over the number 2 spot. The Tampa Bay Lightning take over the number 3 spot. So the Canes drop 2 spots. They are now number 4. The rest of the top 10 remains the same. 5 through 10 remains the same. And they are the Maple Leafs, the Rangers, the Capitals, the Penguins, the Predators, and the Knights, the Golden Knights. So the big movement is obviously at the top with the Canes dropping 2 to number 4, Avalanche moving up from 3 to 2, Tampa Bay Lightning moving up from 4 to 3. And I'm just gonna say it here. We'll bring this down and get us back into the picture here. For the first time in a long time, I put the Colorado Avalanche at number 1. And I am not going to deny it. You can call me biased if you want, but I assure you, this is the first time I have voted for them to be number 1 since the preseason, and this is as high as they've been since then. When when the season started, I've already forgotten. I know it was Avalanche and Lightning in number 1, number 2. Were the Lightning number 1 because they won the cup, or were the Avalanche at number one? I can't remember.
I think that there was probably a couple of weeks there where our teams kind of flip-flopped. I think the Lightning originally started out at one because they were the defending champs. And I actually said at the time that I didn't believe that they were the number one ranked team. I obviously, they're coming off back-to-back cups, but I really thought in that moment in time that the Avalanche were the better team. And but now going to like where we are now with these rankings, do you feel like this is probably the best representation of how things are in the league? Because there has been some controversy over this past season about where teams belong from some of our listeners and viewers, but I think, at least in my opinion, I think this is the best representation of how teams are performing right now. My biggest, obviously, our issue actually was Canes go high for so long, and finally with them moving down to 4, I think I don't have an issue with any of these placements. Have you seen any teams that maybe they should be higher, maybe they should be lower?
And I talked about this with Gil last week. Like you're kind of like your top 10 set is kind of like the question I asked him. Like the teams that are in the top 10, unless they have a horrific couple of weeks, like something epic, like what the Flyers are going through right now. We'll get to them later. But like, do you really see any of these teams dropping out, or any of those teams knocking on the door of top 10 are just going to have like a streak where they can crack the top 10? That's always possible.
Yeah.
But if everything kind of just stays the same and goes the pace that it's going, I don't know. I find it hard to see some of these teams. You got Minnesota at 11. And I think they've leveled off. I think they are kind of what we thought they were. And they could they sneak up there? I think they do, only if a team above them just has a catastrophic fall.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't know. Like, let's see. I want to say Toronto is maybe not deserving of number 5. I think they should be a little bit lower. And I don't know, man. I think what the Penguins are doing right now, I think needs to really be kind of appreciated. And I kind of feel like it's going unnoticed. Because you have teams like the Panthers and the Avalanche doing what they're doing with their 16 game home winning streak, and an 8-game winning streak overall. They're playing fantastic. The Rangers keep playing very well. And I don't know, maybe, because I pay attention more to the East Coast teams. I'm saying I completely ignored I pay more attention to the West Coast teams. Sorry, not that I completely ignored the East Coast teams, but I just get the impression that nobody's really paying attention to Pittsburgh.
I think what it comes down to with Pittsburgh is just when you look at this Pittsburgh roster and how they've been playing, a lot of it has to do, and no surprise here, but a lot of it has to do around the play of Sidney Crosby. I think when you look at the roster, the big question mark with this Penguins team, and I guarantee you once the playoffs roll around, this is definitely going to be something that's going to be spoken about a lot, is their goaltending situation. Not something that really jumps out on the table, not really something that you would think is going to put the Penguins in the Stanley Cup final. But I think that really what it comes down to, and you said with the Leafs, is that maybe they should be a little lower. I think once we start getting into the 5 through 8 range in terms of the rankings, I think what the Leafs, the only way they could possibly fall down at this point is if we're talking about the Rangers, Capitals, and Penguins going on absolute tears within the next week.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I do the Penguins deserve to be higher up? Absolutely. But if you've looked at the recent play with the Capitals, Rangers, and Leafs, they've also been playing incredible hockey. So it's just one of those things. And you also have to remember, during this run, the Penguins haven't really exactly been playing a lot of top-tier opponents. They had a tough win against the Dallas Stars last week, or the week after, which was, I mean, not to say that the Stars aren't a good team, but they're not exactly the Wild or the Blues of the West.
Well, you mentioned the Blues,
Yeah.
and I think that, if Blues fans are listening to this, they're yelling at the top of their lungs like, we deserve to be in the top 10. So are they one of those teams that, because when you just look at the overall standings, they're sitting 8th right now as we're recording this in points. They're 25, 12, and 5 for 55 points. And a team like the Bruins is above them that have only 50 points. But let me see. So the Blues have played 42 games and the Bruins have played 39. So yeah, the Blues have games in hand, 3 games in hand. So that that evens it out a little bit when you take that in consideration. But the Blues, are they another team that, because the Avalanche are playing so well in that division, everybody's looking at them, and people see the distance between the Avalanche and the rest of that division right now. So maybe the Blues and the Wild kind of like take a little bit of a hit because the Avalanche seem to be separating themselves in that division. So unfairly, people are going to be looking at the Blues saying like, oh, maybe they're not as good as they really are. And no, they're a very good team.
No, yeah, they are an absolutely very good team. And I think a lot of the reasoning behind why they're so far down and maybe why a lot of people outside of Blue fandom maybe aren't taking them as seriously is because you look at the Western Conference, other than, after Vegas in that 5th spot overall in points, it kind of starts to fall off a little bit. I mean, you have the Ducks at 49 and then the Kings at 48. And then after that, it's just kind of a lot of teams that are just not playing well at all. And it's just kind of a survival of the fittest, where if you look at the Eastern Conference as a whole, it's just an absolute dogfight from top to bottom. Even, from the lesser talented teams like Detroit and Columbus, you still have teams that could go out there and beat some of the higher ranked teams. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people aren't really looking at St. Louis as high up as they really should be.
All right, well, let's hear from BetOnline, and then we'll talk about how our rankings compare to what the playoff picture looks like. And it's kind of accurate for the most part, about 99% accurate. We'll get into that. But first, BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march into the playoffs towards the Super Bowl. What a week of NFL action last weekend. That was some good stuff, man. So you can go to BetOnline, as it remains your number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. It's a new year, a new updated desktop and mobile website. And when you sign up today, you will receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit using the promo code Locked On. From obviously football, basketball, and hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet and wager on all of your favorite sports. It's where the game starts. That's betonline.ag. So when it comes to the playoff picture and our rankings here, the only team that we have in the top 16 are the Calgary Flames, that are not in, as of, as we're recording this, locked into a playoff spot. So who is the team that is outside of that 16 that currently has a playoff spot? That's the Dallas Stars, who are at 18. So not that far off, and the Flames are, on deck, basically. They are the team that is right below Dallas. They do have they are, Calgary I'm talking about, are at 44 points. Stars have 46, but Calgary does have 3 games in hand. So you can look at that one way or another. Like, yeah, the Flames technically don't have a wild card spot right now, but if all things were equal, they likely would. So I think, the way that the voting has gone in terms of the teams that are in the playoff picture, fairly fair. And the teams just on the outside, you have the Sharks at 17. They are the second team outside of the playoff picture. So yeah, I think things seem to be evening out when it comes to how our rankings are lining up with the teams that are in the playoffs. And we're kind of going to look at this week in and week out because, we're halfway through. And, after we get through the All-Star break, it's a mad dash to the playoffs.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head there. And I was actually going to bring up, they're, as much as a lot of people like to dump on them, I still think there's plenty of time for the Oilers to fix this. And you're nodding your head right now for those who
I'm shaking my head. I'm shaking my head. You're nodding my head would be agreeing with you. Shaking my head is disagreeing with you. I don't know, man. Go ahead.
I just feel, and this is the same reason why we kill people for ranking the Oilers too high sometimes, is that you have two of the best players in the world on your team. And I know
I
there's not a
know.
whole lot backing that up in net as well as on the ice, but I still think you can't count these guys out. I think that it would still be very, very foolish not to at least give the Oilers a little bit of a sliver of hope for them to probably sneak in at the end. I'm not saying once they get in, it's going to be, you know, a magical run, but I still think, especially in the West, with how, you know, teams like the Sharks, who are still really surprising a lot of people, you know, they're a very good team, and I think we could both agree that they're overperforming this year as well as the Stars. But I wouldn't be surprised if we could see a team like the Stars and the Sharks kind of hit a rut in the next couple of weeks, and the Oilers get it back together.
And I think that's the what everybody wants to assume with the Oilers, because they have, you know, God's gift to hockey right now in Connor McDavid, and, you know, his Robin and Leon Draisaitl. Like, they can snap out of this. Those two guys can't make that team snap out of it. And like what we were talking about with the Islanders, can the Islanders break out? Like, this was early in the season, like in November,
Yeah,
and we gave them through December. We were like, if well, let's reconvene on this, and at the new year, let's kind of reassess where the Islanders are at. They're playing better, but, you know, you're just too far back. Like, you can't make up all that ground. The Oilers are dangerously close to that. And yes, they have the two best players, or, you know, however you want to rank them, whatever. Clearly, two of the best players on the planet. You need more than that.
yeah,
And they don't have the depth. They don't have the goaltending. If they had goaltending, I would be like, okay, all that, you know, if that guy can just go on a hot run, whoever, if they had a goalie that was, you know, just playing out of his mind,
yeah.
you always have a chance. But I just don't see it happening. And I'm, you know what? If this is going to cause an uproar, I don't care, because this is how power rankings go for me. It's current. And like I
Yeah.
said, I put the Avalanche at number 1. I put the Oilers at 31 for this week in voting. And I think that's exactly where they belong. They're playing like garbage. When you have those two guys on your team and you lose, what was it, 8 in a row?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody, if at the beginning of the year I told you at some point during the season the Oilers would have an 8-game losing streak with a healthy McDavid and Draisaitl on the team, you would have called me crazy, and Locked On would have fired me.
Well, that actually
But it's happening.
that actually is a good segue into our kind of something we wanted to talk about too as well. You have the Oilers at 31. Now, the team,
Yeah.
I think we could both agree at this point in time is very well deserving of 32 is the Philadelphia Flyers.
And that's who I put at 32. That's the
Yeah.
only reason the Oilers weren't at 32.
And
Yeah.
it's crazy to think about. What, a month ago, we were on this show saying a coaching change is needed and this team will start to turn around. And that's exactly what happened for a week. And then it was right. This is probably the worst hockey I've seen the Flyers play in years. Is this where, and Flyer fans, please reach out to us. We would love to hear how you're feeling. Just, you know, your mental health in general with this whole situation in Philly.
Yeah.
But is this where now, having them at the bottom of the list, does this give the Coyotes, the Kraken, and the Senators a little bit more, you know, okay, at least it's not as bad as Philly type situation? Do you give them a little bit more of a pass? Because the Sabres are in 27, that, you know, they're only a spot above the Flyers. So by that reasoning, I guess, you know, the Sabres would get bumped up, or is it not that bad? Are we maybe being a little harsh in our assessment of the Flyers?
Oh no, it's that bad. It is that bad for the Flyers right now. I don't think there's a single Flyer fan out there that will say like, it could get better. No, it's not going to get better. It could get worse. They said, like Mike Yeo is gonna finish the season. You think? Really? Who's gonna take over? Who wants to take over for that team right now? He's going to finish the season. If he, you know, goes into next season, if he's the guy, I don't even think he's going to be the guy to have the long-term contract for them to really turn the tide, because he hasn't proven he can do it this year. If they saw some improvement, maybe they would have given him an offer to coach him into next year. Likely not going to happen. I don't know, like technically they've lost 13 games in a row.
Yeah.
Not, we're not counting like shootout losses or overtime losses or anything like that. 13 games in a row. And the NHL loves to tout its parity. When you have parity in a league, one team is not losing 13 games in a row. It's not happening. But the Flyers somehow are bucking conventional wisdom and miraculously, I'm impressed. This is like Anchorman, like the dog going in the refrigerator, Baxter going in the refrigerator. I'm not even mad. I'm impressed that they've lost 13 games in a row. And now, like, look what's happening. The Avalanche are involved. Well, I shouldn't say they're involved in trade talks. The rumors are going out that the Avalanche are maybe putting a package together to get Claude Giroux out of Philadelphia and bring him into Colorado. Like, that's what's going to start happening now. Is they're going to have fire sale and hoard some picks. And they're starting on the ground floor right now. So yeah, I as bad as Canadians have been and Coyotes have been and the Kraken, again, like we say a lot, it's what's going on right now. And right now, the Flyers are the worst team in the league, and that you can't even argue that.
Yeah, it was. I think we have to go back and reiterate what we said. I think the only solution there in Philly right now is John Tortorella. Obviously, we're not going to see Torts in Philly this year, but that's a scary combination, especially with how bad they're playing and how potentially bad they could be next year if there's a fire sale. Is there any team on this ranking in the lower half that you think could shock the world in the next couple of weeks, or at least by end make the biggest jump?
Man, it's so tough. Like, like I said, what Gil and I were talking, like, is the top 10 kind of like locked in? They might maneuver around within the top 10. Maybe somebody sneaks in. And then the same is true on the bottom end. I don't like we know where we're at right now in the part of the season. And I don't know. I just don't feel like there's a team that's suffering from like COVID or something like that, or suffering from a massive injury. The Knights are waiting for Eichel to come around, but they're already at number 10.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're, they don't have a long way to go to ascend up the rankings. If they were struggling, just waiting for him to come back, and they were like low teens or high 20s, that would be a team that's like, all right, when they get him back, as long as he's healthy, maybe they'll start ascending up. But
well, I don't know, man. That raises the question though, how people were ranking Edmonton so high because of McDavid and Draisaitl. Now, going forward, once Eichel's on the ice, regardless of how he's playing, do you give Vegas a little bit of bump because of Eichel's on the ice?
I mean, if they're winning,
well, if they're winning games, but I mean, they could win games and he could not break the stat sheet.
That's true. I don't know. I really want to see how he's playing. Like, this is a spinal cord surgery he had.
Yeah.
That's no joke. It's not like he had a hangnail or something like that needed surgery or anything like this. That's a serious surgery that he had. So, I mean, people are just assuming that he's just going to get back on the ice and be the Jack Eichel of old. That's a very real possibility. It could happen, but I want to see it first. I'm not just going to assume it's going to happen. It's definitely something to watch.
Yeah, I would imagine that people are at least going to probably bump him up just a little bit because of his presence. If they go on and win 3 games in a row once he's back on the ice, they can say, "Oh, well, it's the Eichel effect." I'm not going to give them in my non-voting ballot. I'm not going to give them the bump just based off of him being in the lineup. But going back to what I asked you before about the biggest jump, the team I really like, and the reason why I asked that is the team I really like a lot. I'm not saying they're going to break the 16 in our rankings or in the NHL, but I just really like how the Blue Jackets play. I know that it doesn't always translate into wins, and they do have one of the best goalie tandems in the league, I still think. But I could see them kind of trying to play spoiler the next couple of months. Hey, we're not going to make the playoffs, but let's just play for pride. And they definitely have enough talent to do that, to where they could potentially, if they run into some of these West Coast teams, I don't know what their schedule is like for the rest of the year, but they could potentially, if they run into a couple of teams that are trying to get in to fight for that last spot in the West, I could see them playing spoiler and kind of playing a hand in how the West shapes up for the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna force me to, give me a team, just
Give me a
forcing
team.
you,
Give me a team,
you
Chris.
have to have a team. And maybe this is an easy way out because they went on a little bit of a run when they got a new coach, but Vancouver. Yeah, maybe Vancouver can put something together. It seems like they've been stunted a little bit. They're at 21 right now. But could they, collect themselves after the All-Star break and make a run for it? Yeah, I could see that. I could see that happening. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. Everybody always points to the St. Louis Blues, the year they won the cup, and they were, dead last and just started picking teams off one by one. That's always a possibility. I don't know who it could be. I don't know. I'm looking at these teams on the right side of the screen, and I'm like, I can't see a repeat of any of these teams in like what the St. Louis Blues did. But who knows? Who knows? But
yeah, Bruce, there it is.
And I don't want to end the show without letting the Panthers off the hook.
Yeah,
not only did I put the Avalanche at number 1 because I feel like they are like the best team in the league right now and they're playing like the best team in the league, but I also put them at number 1 because the Panthers lost last week to none other than the Seattle Kraken. That don't look good on the resume when you're a team, that's upper echelon for this season. So, and I know Seattle's going to win games here and there, and going back to the parity conversation, like it happens. And this is a little bit of tongue in cheek, but it's not. You lost to the freaking Kraken, and you deserve to drop because of that.
And the week before, the Calgary Flames hang a 5 spot on you. So there's that too. Obviously, those were the only games that they lost in the span of 2 weeks, but still,
yeah,
not a good look.
So we'll see next week. Can either one of our teams or somebody else for that matter, but more importantly, one of our teams unseat the Panthers at number 1? I think it's going to happen. If the Avs continue this streak at home, as we're recording this minutes from now, they're about to puck drop against the Boston Bruins. If they can continue this home winning streak, which, then they go to Chicago, I think, on the road. But continue both things. They have an 8-game winning streak, a 16-game home winning streak. If they can continue both of those, how do you not vote them in number 1 right now? So we'll cross that bridge next week. So that's gonna wrap it up today, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Thursday edition of Locked On NHL Power Ranking Edition. He is Mr. Adam Denker from Locked On Lightning. I'm Chris Maselli from Locked On Avalanche. If you're watching over on YouTube, we'll blow that graphic up one more time to get a good look at it and throw your hatred our way in the comments section, because it's only Adam and I who do these. We lie. It's not the whole league. It's just Adam and I. No, it really is the whole league, people. We don't need your vitriol. All right, everybody. See you next week.